We're going to get started. Welcome to you all. My name's Tony Gilland. I'm the director of the Institute of Ideas Debating Matters competition. Wonderful to be here at Barbican and have you all here for what is a complete highlight of our year. You will know from the programme that this is the showdown, if you like, between the champions of India. Big round of applause. NPS Koramangala School from Bangalore, and the champions from the UK, Withington Girls School from Manchester. And NPS Koramangala, if you think that sounded like you're a little bit outnumbered there, yeah, maybe the audience is slightly biased, but I'm sure you'll win them over. But I do know on social media you're outweighing us Brits with all the comments and tweets that are going on. So I'm not going to say anything about debating matters because you're about to see how wonderful it is. It's a competition that we've been running in the UK for 10 years and in India in partnership with the British Council for a number of years. These are the champions from year 5. It's a brilliantly, intellectually rigorous, challenging, demanding experience to put these youngsters through. But they all volunteer for it and they get a huge amount out of it. And you're about to see it for yourselves if you haven't seen it before. So I would just like to wish both teams a huge amount of luck and say have a brilliant debate. Fight hard, listen hard, but try and enjoy it as well. I would also like to thank our sponsors because without them this simply wouldn't happen. And the Wellcome Trust have supported our work in the UK and in India for many years. Statoil are supporting our work in the UK, the Medical Research Council and Hodder Education. It's absolutely brilliant to have their support. And then finally, by way of handover, I would like to say that we've had a fantastic partnership with the British Council over the years, working on debating matters in India. We have Guru Gujral and Solomon here from India. Give them a wave. They work incredibly hard on this programme in India, and it's brilliant working with them, and brilliant that the British Council fund the Indian team to come over here. And I think it's cultural relations at its best. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Rebecca Walton, Director of Partnerships and Business Development at the British Council. Rebecca.
And really, I only want to say exactly what Tony said. It is a great pleasure to have been invited to be a judge today. The work with Institute of Ideas in India for the British Council is just a fantastic way of reaching out to young people there, and it's a great privilege when you see young people here or there who are getting hold of ideas and with great tenacity sort of tearing into those ideas so they can really understand the world in which they are growing up and which they are going to inherit from us. So I agree entirely with Tony that for us, seeing the international final here between the UK and India is exactly what cultural relations for the British Council is all about. So it's an absolute great pleasure to be a partner in this event. I hope that they will fight very well, fight each other very hard India and the UK. I hope that out of the battle they will actually understand each other a little more, and of course at the end of the day I hope that they also still like each other because it would be rather counterproductive if the fight didn't end in that way. So I'd let the battle begin, and we're really excited to be here and to see them at it.
I'm the competition's national coordinator here in the UK. The motion before the debaters is megacities are bad for the developing world. Arguing for that motion on my right, we have Withington Girls School from Manchester, and arguing against the motion on my left, we have National Public School Koramangala from Bangalore. So what I'm going to do is have the two teams introduce themselves to you, breaks the ice a little bit, gets them used to speaking in public. I'm then going to introduce our panel of judges to you in full, and then we'll get on with the debate. So from Withington Girls School, we have Shiana Patermaster and Samantha Cook. Shiana, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Shiana, and I'm in Upper Sixth at Withington now, and I take philosophy, English lit, chemistry and Latin. I enjoy working in theatres, and I just applied for philosophy at university.
Fantastic. And Samantha, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm Samantha, or Sam if you prefer. I'm in Lewis at Withington. I'm taking 4 A-levels in English language, French, philosophy and history. I'd like to go on to study French and linguistics, and I hope that someday you'll see me as Secretary of State for Education.
Ambitious students, that's good. So let's meet the NPS Koramangala team. We have Ilham Ashraf and Nikhil Amanath. Ilham, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Ilham from National Public School, Koramangala. I'm actually an ex-student. I just passed out and I'm pursuing my bachelor's in medicine and surgery in Karnataka. And I aspire to be a neurosurgeon someday. I love reading, debating and theatre.
Fantastic. Let's hear from you.
Well, we've been talking about the educational conquests. I'm a science student who doesn't do well in science. I want to pursue economics later, probably with a touch of philosophy. And I like sports. I run a lot. I'm a disillusioned Milan fan who was happy when Kaká moved and then he got injured. Well, then hopefully they play Barcelona this week. I'm hoping to catch it in London. And well, not a lot. I like writing a lot. I write a lot. I should be studying, but I write. Well, yeah, that's me.
Okay. Okay, well done teams. Let's meet our panel of judges, distinguished panel of judges for this international final. I'll introduce Rebecca Walton first, who you've just heard from briefly. Rebecca is an experienced professional in the field of cultural relations and education. She joined the British Council back in 1985 and has worked in many different cultural environments, including a country director in Jordan, assistant representative in Norway, and she's also worked extensively in Pakistan and Russia, primarily in education reform. At the British Council's London HQ, Rebecca's held a number of senior management roles, including Director of Arts, and in 2011 she took up the role of Director of Partnerships and Business Development on the Executive Board. So welcome to Rebecca. Next, Rebecca, delighted to welcome Yogesh Chauhan, who was appointed Director of Corporate Sustainability for Tata Consultancy Services in May last year. Yogesh says his brief is to develop and oversee the company's sustainability operations across the UK and in Europe. Prior to this, Yogesh was the BBC's Chief Advisor on Corporate Responsibility and Environment, and he's also Chairman of the Corporate Responsibility Group, CRG, which is the UK's practitioner network and emerging professional body for those working in the field of corporate responsibility and sustainability. Aligned to this, he's a board trustee director at Business in the Community, which is the UK's leading charity promoting responsible business practice. And we're pleased to have Yogesh here as a judge. And last but not least, very pleased to welcome a very experienced debating matters judge, Austin Williams, who he's the director of the Future Cities Project and associate professor in architecture and urbanism. He told me how to say this and I've forgotten it now. Ziyang Diaotong, right, nearly got that right, Liverpool University in Suzhou in China. Austin is the author of The Enemies of Progress, The Dangers of Sustainability, and also co-editor of The Future of Community and The Lure of the City from Slums to Suburbs. He's currently researching housing in Inner Mongolia and writing a book on education in China. Austin has written for too many magazines and newspapers for me to list. You can find all those online. In addition to this, he's been technical editor of the Architects Journal, an architecture critic with BBC London, and transport commentator on the Daily Telegraph. And for those of us who are based in London, we most commonly see Austin in action as chair of Bookshop Barney's, which I think is an excuse for Austin to invite very distinguished people along to these events and then be rude to them. So that's one of the highlights of knowing Austin. So welcome to Austin Williams as well. Right, so both these teams are well versed in the debating matters format. If you're new to it, you'll see it in all its glory as it unfolds. But debaters, just to remind you, you each have 3 minutes to make your opening presentation. After 2.5 minutes, I'll tap on the table and you'll have 30 seconds left. Okay? If you run out of time, don't panic, just finish your sentence and you can come back to anything you haven't been able to get in. So, speaking first, for the motion, Megacities are bad for the developing world in Withington Girls School, is Shiana, and when you're ready.
To begin, I would like to define the terms of the motion. A A megacity is defined as an urban area with over 10 million inhabitants, and we are defining bad for the developing world as what is bad for the vast majority of the population in a developing state. I'm going to speak on the economic problems of megacities for the developing world, and Sam will then speak mainly on the environmental and social issues. Firstly, it is sometimes argued that megacities are good for the developing world because they bring economic growth. However, there is no direct correlation between having a megacity and having an increase in GDP. Although megacities do give initial economic growth, it quickly slows because of the costly difficulties running businesses inside them, caused by poor infrastructure and crime. According to the Forbes Journal, by 2016, the Indian car manufacturing industry, which is currently largely based in Mumbai, will have given the overwhelming majority of its 25 million new jobs to other smaller cities in Gujarat or West Bengal, rather than enriching Mumbai. The reduction or loss of industries from megacities removes middle-income opportunities and therefore widens the gap between rich and poor. Secondly, megacities have a draining effect on the economic situation in surrounding areas that is disproportionate to the average economic gains to be made in a megacity. The apparent prosperity depends upon a huge imbalance between the megacity and a surrounding, often rural area. These areas are pushed further into poverty because a megacity attracts a vast flow of people and resources from the areas around it. Take Nigeria, for example, where a study by the World Bank showed that agriculture provides 90% of the population with their livelihood. Yet the contribution these livelihoods are having on GDP is slowing because of people relocating to Lagos. Once these rural migrants arrive, a few manage to find jobs in factories, but the vast majority become unemployed and homeless. Unfortunately, the high-profile problems of the megacity then take precedence for the Nigerian government, as they try to fix them, but then they then cannot improve the infrastructure and services in other areas of the country. Thirdly, it is undeniable that these megacities do attract a huge flow of people wishing to escape rural poverty through succeeding in the city. However, it is also undeniable that it is only a tiny minority of the population in a megacity who achieve wealth and prosperity when compared to the number of people living in slums. UN Habitat has estimated that the world's slum population is expected to reach 889 million by 2020. Mike Davis states in his book Plan to the Slums that inequality is not the byproduct of megacities, it is the engine that drives them. We saw this recently in East Asia where governments attempted to clear the slums, however quickly realised they could not do this because these people were filling menial jobs such as working on transport and trains, and this then ground to a halt. We are not pastoral nostalgics, and there is no magic bullet to fixing megacities. The key distinction that we want to make is a greater proportion of the population in the developing world can achieve success in medium-sized cities, so overall this is better for the developing world as a whole than having a very small minority of the population succeeding in the megacities. Thank you.
Sure. So first to speak against the motion is Ina. Are you ready?
According to the United Nations, cities are dynamic centers of creativity, community and culture, and therein lies the appeal. Temporary discomfort in the city for a villager is an investment for a better future, because megacities provide remarkable levels of opportunity for everyone who goes there. It is a fact that opportunities abound in the megacity. Cities help generate jobs and dispense services more efficiently than less densely settled areas. In fact, the cost of delivering basic services is about 30 to 40% cheaper than it would be in a rural area. Furthermore, important infrastructure that is typically commonplace in a developed country is not available in developing countries except in the megacities. Megacities are transformative. Life in a megacity raises the standard of living of everyone who goes there. Furthermore, the anonymity of a megacity gives people a chance to create their own identity without being tied down by any restraints. Especially in countries like India, rural areas are deeply entrenched in caste and social hierarchies, which trap them and bog them down. But once these people migrate to megacities, they have an equal opportunity of building their own future without any such social restraints holding them back. Megacities are the future homes for the exponentially growing population of developing countries. The phenomenal rate of population explosion presents a major challenge to them. However, instead of treating this population as a problem, if we accept that these people are going to exist anyway, we can spend our energies in better planning to accommodate them. Urban density is actually a boon. It allows half of humanity to live on just 2.8% of the land, thereby using energy and resources more efficiently. Furthermore, the young population of developing countries is a potential demographic dividend that will pay out only if there exist thriving cities. The inevitability of urbanization for progress should be accepted. The need of the hour for developing countries is to prioritize their needs, which may be very different from the immediate priorities of the West, which currently focus a lot around sustainability. We should be pushing for ways to innovate and accommodate this large urban population and not resist change or get caught up in the golden age syndrome. Megacities are the way ahead, and there's no point in just preserving the memory of our forefathers and staying within the safe confines of our past, which is pretty much equivalent to embracing a stasis. With the changing dynamics of developing countries, we need megacities to cater to the aspirations of people. The moment we stop thinking of humanity as a problem to be solved and start looking at them as an investment for the better future, our perspectives will definitely change. Megacities reflect the aspirations of our current population, and as long as we have faith in humanity, we can rest assured that this desire will result in improving megacities from within. Thank you.
The second to speak for the motion is Sam, and when you're ready.
Okay, as the second speaker for the proposition, I will be discussing the social problems that megacities cause in the developing world. First of all, megacities are a breeding ground for diseases that local hospitals are not yet equipped to cope with. The close quarters in which many megacity inhabitants must live mean that contagious diseases are particularly prevalent. Megacities in the developing world are just that, developing. Currently existing megacities in LEDCs simply do not have sufficient health services to deal with epidemics of diseases such as cholera and diarrhea. The doctor-to-patient ratio is of course much lower in these megacities. A survey conducted by IMS Health earlier this year found that Mumbai has one of the lowest doctor-to-patient ratios in India, whereas the significantly less populous city of Faridabad has the highest. This is a problem not based in the developed world, due to improved sanitation and access to clean water, which took decades of innovation and expenditure to achieve. In addition, a more evenly distributed population allows for better access to hospitals and other public services. As well as infectious disease, megacities see a rise in maladies which are almost city-specific, such as respiratory problems due to industrialization and road traffic accidents. Secondly, megacities in the developing world are incredibly vulnerable to environmental issues. A number of the world's megacities grew out of smaller farming communities which utilised the increased fertility that fault lines gave the land. Now, we have tens of millions of people living in informal, unregulated and bureaucratically invisible slums which, if disaster strikes, are almost certain to be completely devastated. Only last year in Lagos, unprecedented winds and heavy rainfall resulted in massive flooding which, when coupled with the already poor sewage and drainage systems, left the streets covered in sanitary waste. My partner already mentioned the economic issues surrounding megacities, but it is important to note that any economic benefit they do bring goes straight to the middle and upper classes. Megacities essentially deceive the most vulnerable and profit on their disappointment. The vast majority of migrants who travel to megacities, pushed by poverty and rural life, and pulled by the promise of opportunity and innovation, do come close to their vision, in that they live in the slums at the gates of the rich landlords. It is not a gap between rich and poor in developing megacities, it is a canyon. This breeds dissent, crime and inequality. To the proposition, this seems to be a ticking bomb set to explode in rioting and devastation. As a final point, it's important to note that we are not against cities as a whole. We will go on to make the case for the medium-sized cities, but we are adamant in the fact that the megacity brings more harm than good to developing countries. Megacities like Seoul, Tokyo and London are successful because they have stable and powerful governments with the ability to pump in money to be spent on sustainable infrastructure. In Nigeria, the Philippines and elsewhere, this is simply impossible. Supporting megacities will only send these already precarious nations on a downward spiral that will be difficult at best to recover from. Thank you.
Thank you. To speak against the motion is Nico. Come on, ready.
Okay, so Sam said that again, they're for cities, but they're against megacities. Well, humanity is moving to an age where we are embracing urbanism. In fact, if you did not know, they're changing the name of our species to Homo sapiens urbanus, or literally the urban human, which means we are embracing urbanism as such. cities are growing at such enormous rates. They keep mentioning Lagos. In 2000, Lagos was 3 million, then it was 11 million, and now it's 21 million and undocumented. The urban cities are growing at 4 times increase of urban population, especially in developing countries. Now, how do you control such a population? It's not just stopping the rural poor, it's stopping people like me. I am not from Bangalore. I am from a small town in Kerala, but I have moved to Bangalore, and I don't know anything about a small town. Why? I can probably live there, but I need the place. They talk about, the diseases. Well, you say there are less disease in Mumbai. There are no doctors outside Mumbai. There are doctors only inside the cities. If I go outside, I have $1 million to spend. I don't get infrastructure. I have to move to the city to get the hospitals. Now, the other thing about overpopulation. Overpopulation is a very subjective term. If you look 2,000 years ago, Roman aristocrats left Rome because it was stifling with people. Oh my God, 100,000 people, how do we live here? Yeah, so we have to accept that there are people around us, and people are what make the city. Okay? We should accept it now and cater it before it becomes hard to handle later. We don't say we're going to limit the city to 5 million people. We're going to stop that now. If you look, where does the investment go in? Bangalore has the same roads since the 70s because they never thought they were going to grow up. So they invest in it. Now, how much does it cost to make a road wider? Not much. But how much does it cost to demolish everything on that road once it's built? It's crazy. That's where you lose the money. If you accounted for it in the beginning and accept that the population is going to come, then you're going to be fine. Now, well, the other thing is, if I go to New York, people say, oh my God, it's crowded. But I feel, wow, that's like 12 meters of footpath. That's bigger than my roads. And I'm like, what? Don't tell me it's overcrowded. Come to Bangalore. Well, see. If we accept that the reality of urbanism in the urban age and our very species are evolving, we can accommodate them. So, yeah. Well, I'm not done. I'm looking through my notes. I'm sorry. Well, yeah. Now the other thing I want to say is it's human ambition to move a step up. Like, I saw London and I'm blown away. Like, I would like to move here. And maybe it's the grass is green on the other side. Maybe you don't like London. Perhaps it's irrational, but it's a fact. It's human ambition. Slums move out 125 million people a year. Look at them. They're urban poor who became lower middle class, and they're happy. Now, if you're quoting that the slums are rising, that the population is rising, that's not a factor you look at. You look at the people who moved in and transformed. Maybe more people are going in, but some people are coming out as well, and they're becoming better off. So that's what I want you to look at. It's an opportunity of change. It's a new reality. It's a step up.
Okay, thank you. Now. Judges, first of all, we're going to have an initial opening question from each of you for Shiana and Samantha from Withington Arguing Coordination. We'll take all 3 questions from you, give them an opportunity to respond, and then we'll just open up the dialogue, so do feel free to jump in. Austin, can we start with a question from you, please?
Yeah. Well, it was what Sam said towards the end about powerful governments, precarious nations, and all that. That was your kind of closing polemical remark that maybe there's an absence of those things in these areas. So I just want to find out from you, given the fact that people will move to urban areas, it's a given. Now, what is your alternative to maybe stop this happening? I'll give you an example. In China, which is a country which we've used this example over history to prove the authoritarian nature of China. They have a hukou system, which is a government registration form, which tells you that when you're born, you're an agricultural resident or you're an urban resident. And if you don't have an urban residency, you can't move to the city. And that's stabilized China's metropolitan growth, but it's authoritarian politics. So is that what you're advocating, restricting people coming to these cities to stop them growing?
Thank you, Austin. Yogesh, question from you, please.
Thank you. Shireen and Samantha, you probably are familiar with the TV programme Grand Designs. And several years ago, Kevin MacLeod went to the Dharavi in Mumbai, which is the largest slum in the world. And he actually found there a sense of harmony, a sense of human spirit, and a sense of joy, and how individuals in what was seen by us as slums were actually leading productive, meaningful lives. So my question to you is, do you have a sense of a megacity that is slightly outdated, which is of an organised, well-planned, clean city, but yet the reality of megacities, and something we ought to be embracing, is of chaos, and we ought to celebrate that chaos and celebrate the human spirit within that.
Thank you, Yogesh. And Rebecca, please.
Yes, my question is to Shiana. You talked quite a lot about the gap, the widening gap between rich and poor. My question is, when they come into the city, if both rich and poor are getting richer, why would the gap, the growing gap, matter?
Thank you, Rebecca. Judges, thank you very much. So, Shannon and Samantha, tough questions to kick you off with. There isn't time for you both to answer all three questions. You're going to need to very quickly pick and choose who's going to reply to which.
Okay, so I got back to Rebecca's question about the gap between rich and poor. I think the reason that there is this gap is because the rich are getting richer, but the majority of the poor aren't getting richer. Like, a minority of the poor that move to megacities might be able to achieve greater economic prosperity, but the vast majority aren't actually getting that much noticeably richer. Most, in Sāo Paulo, most of the slum residents only earn, I think it's $2 a day as a majority, and that's just enough to live off. It's not enough to close the gap between rich and poor. I think what we're saying is that megacities actually exacerbate this gap because there isn't that in between earning power, because everyone who achieves economic success in megacities often normally they do so by exploiting those below them. Like in Sāo Paulo slums, even the people who moved in there 15 years ago have managed to make economic gains because they've started renting the land they have in the slums to newcomers. But by doing so, they're going up a little bit, but then you're creating even more poor, who are being even more, being exploited even more. So for those, they cannot become richer.
Sam, do you want to pick up one of the others?
Yeah, I'll take Austin and Yogesh's questions. Austin, you asked, do you really want to restrict people from moving into these cities? We do agree that, yeah, people are going to move to cities, and we are advocating for the medium-sized city because it's manageable, but a megacity isn't. Your example of China, we can even see that here in London. In London, we have the green belt around it. There are strict planning laws that stop this influx of people coming into it. And if restricting people from coming in is what will cause the greatest good for the greatest number of people, then yes, that is what we think should be done. And to take on Yogesh's question about the sense of harmony, spirit and joy, perhaps that's a slight romanticisation of what really does occur in these slums. There is a huge amount of crime, disease, absolute abject poverty, and to embrace a sort of chaos, we don't think that is necessarily what is best for the developing world.
Yeah, really quickly.
I'd also say that it may be that in this particular slum there is this atmosphere, but you've got this case studies of a lot of slums that don't have this. Like a lot of the ones in South America and in Nigeria, often end up in increasing crime rates because people are encouraged to join criminal gangs.
I want to give the judges an opportunity to come back on what they've heard. Nicola, I'm going to have to ask you to sit back again. Sorry. Listen, I lost it.
Yeah, so basically, Samantha, you're telling me that if authoritarian, dictatorial restrictions on people's freedom of movement is in the greatest benefit for the majority, then you're in favour of it. So you're telling me that you are in favour of authoritarian, dictatorial restrictions on people's flows into the city.
Yeah. I'm telling you that I am in favour of preventing a massive influx of people who will go into an area, experience poverty, homelessness and disease. I'm saying that I am in favour of people being prevented from causing this mass chaotic city.
Sorry, just let me get this right. That was yes.
Yes.
I'll be interested to find out a bit more about case studies you refer to. Precisely which ones are they, and what are you tell me where they are cited.
Gary, your thoughts about that for a second. Rebecca, anything you?
Yes, I felt I really didn't feel I had an answer because I didn't get an answer to the importance of, lack of importance to the gap between rich and poor. I got another set of possible data about some more people getting poorer, but I didn't get an answer on the gap.
Okay, I'll take the case studies on crime first. One of my friends is from Mexico City in Brazil because they end up in the favela slums there. most of the rent, like most of like the land that is there, is bought by essentially criminal like leaders or gang leaders of corrupt politicians there, so they can unofficially they have rights over that land, which they then rent off to residents, and they also, because there's less income, people are then encouraged to join this kind of cycle in order to get housing and have an income, because often it's the only way they can get an income. And Rebecca, I think in terms of why the gap is important, I think the gap is important in megacities because it's dangerous because of what Sam was talking about earlier about the kind of close proximity of everybody and this gap between rich and poor. It exacerbates feelings of resentment between the two. And because in a lot of developing megacities, it's often it's very difficult to police, and sometimes the police isn't as uncorrupt as it is here. It's hard to deal with these problems if it erupts in violence or crime against each other.
Thank you. Okay, judges. To be equitable time, we need to leave it there now for Withington. Thank you very much for your question. So, guys, you can relax, but importantly, listen to what the judges are asking the other two. It could be useful for you. So, judges, same process now, please, for Ilham and Nikhil from MPS Koramangala arguing against the motion. I'm going to be boring, Austin. Can I start with you again?
Why am I boring?
No, you're not boring. I'm just
Right.
myself.
Well, I don't necessarily hold with the example that English put forward of Kevin MacLeod's happy time in the slums of Iran. He actually spent 2 days there, then went to a hotel. But the idea that if you live in a city, and there are slums in cities, okay, but when you do scale up, you do lose something of community spirit. Okay, so even London has pockets of local areas that you identify with. And so it's two things. One is that surely you must recognise that megacities lose something when they become megacities and go beyond cities. And the second thing is why don't you suggest maybe building more cities rather than agreeing with the fact that megacities is the way forward? Because megacities can be pretty grim places.
That's what I said. Rebecca, could we jump to you next, please?
Yes, I wanted to ask Ilham about the ability to give citizens of megacities, or inhabitants of megacities, I choose that very carefully, the rights of a citizen. So if they're not registered, if they're illegally there, if they've just arrived, and the state doesn't know they're there, and that is indeed the case in so many huge slums, how can they actually be citizens, take part in democratic processes, and indeed make the decisions that they need to, or influence the decisions they need to have made to create the infrastructure they need? So how can they become an actor in their own improved living conditions?
Thank you, Rebecca. And Yogesh.
I think it was a comment Ilham made earlier around environmentally more sustainable urbanism is. I just want to question that. Kind of the carbon involved in building buildings, in greater aspirational lifestyles that urbanisation has, greater use of cars. Is it actually the case that it is more environmentally sustainable to live in a mega city? And I would just kind of want you to consider whether the reality is quite as accurate as you suggested earlier.
Yogesh, thank you. Okay, Ilham and Nikhil, again, there isn't time for you both to answer each of those 3 questions. Very quickly, pick and choose.
Okay, so Austin talked about how megacities lose something. So I think there's a simple economic concept about Pareto efficiency, which would say you lose a bit but you gain a lot. But the thing is, sometimes people don't want to keep things. Like people from the community, like in local towns, they don't want to remain there. They want to move to the city. No one asks them, here, you go to the city. The city is there. And the other thing about how we said, why don't we build more cities? Sometimes the goal of the city isn't just infrastructure. There are several other factors. We can't control which cities remain cities, like the small ones, and which ones become mega cities. I mean, China has no shortage of cities. They keep building every day. But why is Shanghai so crowded? It just happens that way, and Ilham wants to take it.
Ma'am, to your question about the ability of a city to provide rights to a citizen, well, if you take India for example, even in the rural areas, the people there are not necessarily documented for. And the thing is that even there they don't get a basic ration card which gives them subsidized food and things like that, because the government overlooks them whether they're in the slums or in the rural areas. But the only positive of having people in a city or even in a slum for that matter is that you have the strength of numbers and you have a huge community of people. So when that community has a voice, then that voice will eventually be heard. And there are a bunch of NGOs internationally, like Slum Dwellers International, which coordinates with the organizations in India and takes help and collaborates with the government. So when you have the strength of numbers, I think you have a stronger voice and the higher the chance that your voice is heard. So to your question about cities being more environmentally sustainable, see, cities are a reality and cities are the way to go because urbanization is inevitable. But I think if you have a higher urban density, then definitely there will be, then I think it will be environmentally more sustainable because as you see, if you have a huge group of people, then you become more efficient when you use resources because they are limited, and there's a huge community out there who's sharing the same resources. So I guess you'll have a lot of pressure from everyone to not waste water and things like that.
Okay.
So in that scale of things, I think they are definitely more environmentally sustainable.
Judges, that's you, Austin.
Very quickly. You answered my question for me. Right, Shanghai is a great city, that's why people want to go there. But China knows that it's getting overcrowded. 16 million, 23 million, nobody knows. But they're now building 9 satellite cities around Shanghai to alleviate the pressure. So that was my question to you, not an answer to me. So what I was trying to get at was, even you admitted coming to London, white pavements and all that, less dense cities are more pleasant. So that's not a megacity, right? That's a kind of a nice city.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, the satellite towns you talked about, like the one you stay in, I think they're also crossing 10 million already, aren't they? Well, they're coming close, as I think Chisel and King and all of them, as far as I read, Beijing has Tianjin next to it.
Never believe Chinese statistics.
I think even if they don't, like the Chinese statistics probably hide more people than they come. So anyway, the other point is the less density. As I said, I think, okay, Manhattan is definitely not less dense. It's, I think, 15 times more dense than Bangalore. It's just that Bangalore hasn't got, they don't want to invest. Like, they've been holding back. And if they wish to invest in the city, that's when people will find it satisfactory. I have no problem with the Bangalore crowds. It's not the crowds that bother me. It's the fact that I don't have a pavement to walk on. I have to dodge cars. And they don't invest in that. They think, oh, whatever, people will move out. But the fact is, you have to invest in the city. You have to believe in it. It's not a waste of money, as she said, like, Lagos is, like, Nigeria is pouring money to Lagos. It's an investment. The city will provide the money back for you.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give the judges an opportunity to come back. So, Yogesh or Rebecca?
Well, I liked your answer, Ilan. Thank you for that. I would like to understand a little bit more from you about registration of people coming into cities and just how cities know that they're there, given the quantity of people coming into cities in India, for example.
Well, we do have the population census that takes place, where people actually go door to door and take account of the people who are living there. And then we have facilities in India, especially where you can apply for ration cards, especially if you're below the poverty line, you get subsidized foods and things like that. So again, coming back to the fact that it's a community and people, like if you have people coming in, I have a maid who's a migrant from Kolkata, and she's been living here, and her life has definitely improved. She lives in a slum, but the fact is that because there's so many people around, they learn from each other and they realize that these are the procedures. They may be illiterate, but they do come to know about applying for ration cards and things like that. So in a way, the community itself helps improve the slum from within.
Thank you.
There was a nice, comforting statement you made around the environmental impact, but it was low in terms of actual statistics and solid kind of facts and figures. You know, it was. So I'm still wanting for a more robust answer from you around the environmental impact of megacities.
Well, if you look at Bangalore as a city, for example, the reason is that if you look at the problem of waste accumulation and things, it happens everywhere, but when it's dispersed, people don't really sit up and take notice. But in Bangalore, as of now, waste accumulation has become a huge problem. So, because it's so evident in front of us, because it's a city and you have a whole bunch of people living there, people sit up and take notice. And now we've started a huge plan for recycling and composting and things like that. But if it happens in dispersed pockets, I think the amount of waste generated would still be the same, but the action taken would not be that immediate or efficient. So.
Judges, thank you very much again to be equitable of time. I do need to leave it there. Thank you for your questions. We'll come back to you at the very end of the debate for your initial feedback and comments before you retire to decide who you think's won. Audience, this is your chance to get involved in the debate now. I can see a lot of DM schools, DM judges, lots of people I also don't know, and last year's UK champions as well. They didn't win this debate, so I know that last year, so I know they'll take it. Right, can I ask you to wait for the microphone to come to you and try and keep your questions or points succinct. So let's just start with the chap in the front.
I don't think, well, sorry, this is for the against team. Yeah. I don't really think that the problems that megacities have on the country as a whole have been really addressed. I mean, I've got some quotes here from The Economist on city limits. It says, congestion, housing shortages, pollution and a lack of urban planning mean that Latin America's biggest cities now are dragging their country's economies, according to a report by the McKinsey Global Institute. And it also goes on to say that in the decade to 2008, Sāo Paulo's output grew only 2/3 as fast as Brazil's, whereas Rio de Janeiro managed a pitiful 37% of the national average. And of the 9 cities with the biggest economies, only Lima, Mexico City and Monterrey saw economic growth in this period that was above their country's norms. These aren't places of economic prosperity, they are places of economic drag.
Really good question. I'm going to need everyone to be much, much more succinct than I. My boss, Tony Gillen's already will talk to me.
Thank you very much. Ilham and Nicola, I'd really like to believe in your side. It's a very beautiful, progressive story. You keep talking about cities. London is not a megacity. This debate is not about cities. You have got to make the case for megacities. Messy and slums and all the problems, you've got to make that case. And just very quickly to Chanel and Samantha, I don't think you've addressed this question of your authoritarian streak. I think you've got to, you haven't said anything about your vision for the future that deals with the fact that people are moving to these messy, unpleasant places for the opportunities that they give.
Thanks, Tony. We're going to go right to the back to former competitor and now a competition alumni, Chigozie. Chigozie, if you can wait for the microphone, so the microphone, if you can turn right round, thank you.
Hi, this question is to Sam. You said in your opening statement that an evenly distributed population means better access to hospitals. Just intuitively, that seems obviously false, because I live in a city, I'm never more than 20 minutes away from a hospital, and usually within about 5 minutes of an ambulance being able to get to me. If I was in an evenly distributed population, I'd be at least an hour away from a hospital, and that's not very much use to me if I have a heart attack. So, have you got any statistics to show that an evenly distributed population means better access to hospitals?
Okay, thank you. So, microphone at the back, if you could come down to this lady at the end, so if you can wave your arm. Yeah.
My question is to you guys as well. Don't you think that by stopping people from going to megacities, this is effectively condemning people to staying where they were born, which is immoral because it prevents people from the ability to better themselves and improve their quality of life? And if they're born in poverty, you're preventing them from moving to the city. And even if they move from poverty to more poverty, surely some of them will be moving from poverty to improved standards. So it's like unjust and immoral to raise this.
Okay, so I'm going to take teacher Martin from Exeter College, and I see Exeter College here. So.
To the opponents, you keep on saying that with this force of numbers in megacities, if something goes wrong, you've got a lot of people there who can kick off. But isn't that actually a problem? If they kick off, it could cause social unrest, and that might be, riots, civil unrest. It could be an awful mess.
Okay, and just to balance it out, how about one more for Withington Girls? Who's got a question for these guys? Okay, so chat there. You can pass the microphone along from the thank you.
This is expanding on something someone already mentioned, basically access to medical care. You spoke about the doctor-to-patient ratio between Mumbai and Faridabad. Okay, there's a couple of things. Faridabad is puny. I mean, do you even know how puny Faridabad is? It's really small. Okay, beside the point, what I want to mention is, you didn't talk about the quality of the doctors. I mean, just because there's a smaller doctor-to-patient ratio, it doesn't account for the fact that Mumbai has far more citizens than Faridabad does, or the quality of the doctors that Bombay has that Faridabad doesn't. The quality of the procedures that Bombay hospitals have that Faridabad doesn't.
Okay. I'll take one more question for each side, just because it's the international final. I can't possibly get you in, so will this lady here? Yeah, thank you. I'll take 1 minute back.
I have 2 quick questions.
It has to be really quick.
Yeah. One for Ilan. Firstly, you talked about the caste system in India and how moving to a megacity creates a sort of anonymity, but because there's no correlation between not having a caste, receiving the wealth because of the exponential growth of the population, or would that just breed discontent? My second question is for Nikhil. You say focus on the successes, the people who've been made prosperous by the megacity, but don't the proposition set out a sort of utilitarian principle, the greatest good for the greatest number? What you're saying isn't compatible with that.
Okay, how about one more for Withington Girls, and then we'll come back to the team. So you in the green top, if you could wave so the microphone person can see you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mark.
This is for Samantha.
Yeah.
I think that by saying that a negative thing is a megacity, well, this is kind of going back a few steps from the present time that we are in now, which is kind of the futuristic megacity. By saying that we need to be condemned to smaller groups of people and smaller communities, isn't that kind of going back on ourselves in how we've come forward from the past by creating a stronger and more communal, larger place where people can succeed in life? Going back would just be going back in time to where everything started, but we have expanded from that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Audience, thank you for those questions. If I haven't taken you now, I promise to try and take you in the second round. As you guys have the last questions, so MPS, your job now is to answer those questions as succinctly as you can, quickly and succinctly as you can.
In response to your question, first of all, we believe it's not just about the numbers, because looking at the way the population is growing exponentially, even a medium-sized city would eventually develop into a megacity. But if you look at the positives of a megacity, it's diversity, and the fact that there's, at the cost of maybe having smaller houses, you gain a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of interaction there, and it's a very diverse economy. If you take a small industrial area, for example, if the industry decides to pull away, the entire city is doomed. But here it's really diverse, so I think that's a major plus point for megacities. Talking about social unrest, first of all, you can have farmers' rights in rural areas as well. The social unrest is not necessarily a bad thing. The cause for social unrest is a latent discontent among people. And if that is addressed, which I think then the whole problem of social unrest goes. And fact remains that people who come to cities, the rural poor, they don't come out of compulsion, they come by choice. So I don't think they're going to be a discontent lot, because for someone who doesn't earn, who goes hungry for a good part of the week in a rural area, would definitely have a much higher standard of life.
Okay, Nick, well, you need to pick up on some of the other points.
Okay, so his quote from The Economist. The Economist also wants zero carbon footprint, no smoke, 100% renewable energy. I'm sorry, that seems very unrealistic. People forget how these cities of modern times, developed countries, so to speak, have grown. They took 300, 400 years, and you want us to grow in 10 years? I'm sorry, that something's missing here. We can't expect such unnatural expectations in such a short time. We will have growing pains, sometimes slums will occur. We have to move forward from them. The other thing about how she talked about castes and how caste might not, not having caste might not necessarily mean a better economy. By caste, I am a coconut picker. I don't pick coconuts very well. So I didn't even know that till I was 10 years old and my parents told me. So imagine what I'd be doing then. I'd probably be wearing one of those robes and yeah.
Any other
And yeah, the other thing is about social unrest. I mean, we have a guy named Gandhi who brought up social unrest, and no one looked at that as a bad thing.
Okay, that's a good point. So, well done, you guys. You now need to think while these guys are answering their questions. One key point from each of you that you really want to challenge them on once they're done. So, Shana and Sam, same process, 50 to the point responses.
Well, I'll take the authoritarian streak and stopping people improving their chances by moving to cities together. I think what we're saying is that we don't want loads of people migrating to megacities and ending up in a worse situation than they were before. So, yes, we might have to have slightly authoritarian policies to stop this happening to start with, but we're not saying that we're going to keep them in rural poverty. That's not what we're advocating. What we're advocating is that that essentially we just want to do the whole thing more slowly. It raises the point that Nicola just made that the Western world took 300 to 400 years to develop their megacities. It's the fact that megacities in the developing world have a population that is increasing so fast that it cannot be kept up with. So what we'd say is that what you want to do is just slow it down. I'm not saying we're going to keep people in rural poverty and in the golden age of agriculture, but we're saying that yes, we would have to be controlling on the number of people moving into cities, but we think that this is a necessary thing.
Okay, so
I'll take the question from the lady at the back about evenly distributed population, and from this young man here about the quality of doctors. I'll sort of put them both together. When I said evenly distributed population, I did say a more evenly distributed population. So I'm sort of moving away from what we have in the megacities, which is like 10 million people in this tiny, tiny space of land where they can't access hospitals because there's simply way too many of them. With regard to, you asked some statistics, and you also mentioned how small Faridabad is. It has 2.3 doctors for every 1,000 people, whereas in Mumbai it's like only sort of about 1. And because Faridabad is smaller, it has a smaller population, it means that people can access these doctors a lot easier. And with regard to the quality of the doctors, I do actually have a really interesting statistic from the British Medical Journal. They did a survey of private medical practitioners in a Mumbai slum. Out of 100 of those practitioners, there were 80 different treatments being used for tuberculosis, and only 4 of these met the standard set by the World Health Organization. So yeah, there are more doctors in Mumbai, but the quality of healthcare that people can receive there is not adequate, it is damaging. They are worse off for that.
Thank you. Any other point you want to come up?
Oh yeah, I did have one more actually. The lady in the green top, yeah, you said that we're taking a step back if we discourage megacities. I feel that with drawing maybe a false dichotomy here, it's not necessarily this super futuristic megacity or this rubbishy rural community. If we look at Germany, which is one of a really advanced developed country, they have learned that the megacity is not the best option. They've specialised and they've got towns that focus on technology, engineering, things like that, and we think that that is the way forward. That is our own take on the best option to really excel and innovate.
Okay, we're going to keep the pressure up on Withington now. So, Ilan, you've heard what Withington Girls have been arguing. What's the key thing you want to challenge them on there?
Okay, I would like a little bit of clarity on how you expect to slow down a population, because I think trying to keep them in the rural areas is not really feasible, because they have a right and they have aspirations and desires. Furthermore, talking about the spread of epidemics and disease and things like that, don't you think that if we know that it's going to happen, it's inevitable because we have a huge population concentrated in one area, that makes us all the more prepared to handle it, which is a better alternative considering the fact that we don't have any medical facilities in most of the rural areas. So,
Nikhil, what's your point or question?
Okay, the other thing is, I think it's not the same timeline we follow anymore. It's not that cities grow from agrarian to the whole industrial age to services. We happen at one shot. I mean, it just happens. And we can overcome that. Cities are actually growing. They're growing at a different rate nowadays. I mean, you look at Lagos, you say it's bad, but what are your standards? If you look at Lagos, there's a point in that town where they don't have traffic lights. Now, if you're a Western world, you say, what is that? They're not developed. They pray to the traffic god. And I read about this and I was like, what? But it works. They haven't had an accident. I mean, you have more accidents with traffic lights. And maybe you should let them embrace their culture.
Right.
So another thing I want to point out, you mentioned Germany.
Very quickly.
Now, Germany is rich, okay? Their citizens spend 4 times on electricity what you spend. And you spend 4 times what we spend. And yeah, like, That's crazy. We can't afford that. Germany's really nice. I'd like there, but...
Okay, right. Right, Shanna and Sam, you can maybe but try and respond to those questions. Try and pick one each.
Right. So, I'd say that in terms of what my definition of bad is in Lagos, I'd say that my definition of bad is that the Nigerian state government have, in an attempt to reduce their slum population, demolished a slum and left thousands of people in Bardia homeless last year, and then they also put 70 to 100 people in the back of lorries and drove them off to the other side of the country, left them by the side of the motorway because they were mentally handicapped and sick or ill or elderly. And the reasoning given by the government task force for this was that they can't have a successful megacity if they have slums. So if this is what megacities in the developing world are causing their governments to do, then I would say that that is bad for the developing world.
Okay, and Sam, and then I'll let you guys come back.
I will actually really quickly take up that traffic lights thing you said. I think that's really interesting because actually, according to the Journal of Urban Health, developing countries like Nigeria account for 85% of the traffic accidents in the world, probably because they don't have traffic lights. But to take on Ilam's question about the lack of healthcare in rural areas, again, we're not saying that we want people to just stay in the rural areas. We're saying that the megacity is bad. You said yourself that to have so many people in such a small area, in such a close proximity, means that these diseases are inevitable. Therefore, surely, a megacity is bad for the developing world if these diseases are inevitable in that kind of area.
And in terms of slumming...
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I think it's time that we become a little realistic and see the fact the medium cities concept that we are propagating would probably have an equal chance of having an epidemic breakout in that. And at the rate our population is progressing, all those cities would probably end up as megacities someday. So the idea is here is to accept what's going to happen and be better planned and prepared for it instead of trying to deny the facts.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
Okay, just because there are 1,000 people to one doctor, that just means more people are going to see the doctor in a day. I mean, you guys work smaller hours, Indians work from midnight to midnight. But then the other thing about the Nigeria case, I think Nigeria is trying too hard to be Western, and that's the problem. There's so much pressure on them to become a normal megacity that they probably feel, oh, we should move people out of the town. But if they let them grow naturally, this wouldn't happen. Why would they carry 4,000 people out if the Western countries weren't saying, God, you guys need to improve? Maybe let them grow on their own.
I want to keep this going, it's a big discussion, but I also want to give you guys an opportunity to challenge what these guys have said, so why don't you do that now?
Well, my point comes to something Ilan's kept raising a lot of the time is that you're saying that cities promote diversity and culture and this is amazing. Now, I would like you to answer why you think that a megacity is conducive to doing this when it's only, even in London, it's only the the majority of people who benefit from the culture and the arts in London tend to be the slightly more well-off and wealthy. So obviously this is a problem in the developing world too. So why do you think that the culture created in a megacity that only serves the elite is better than culture that, because medium-sized cities are also dense, so not as dense, but they still promote culture. So why is that any better than having medium-sized cities with greater accessibility for more people?
And Sam, what would your point to MPS be?
Nikhil, you said that it is cheaper to make a road wider at the beginning to plan for something, and then to demolish everything on the road to build a better, wider road. And you've also said that the medium-sized cities are going to become megacities, so therefore we should plan for them. But these medium-sized cities, they're medium-sized. It will be. You've said yourself it's more expensive to. It's a worse option, to demolish the things on these roads in these medium-sized cities. Would it not be better to control the growth and then keep these medium-sized cities functional, operating well, rather than to just say, oh, well, they're going to become megacities anyway, let's try and stop everyone dying of dysentery.
Okay, how do you control the growth? I mean, it's not like, oh, this city is going to become a megacity, this city is going to be a medium city. No one decided that in the first place. The fact is, the city existed, people liked the place, people moved there. And okay, I don't know why, I like to quote Bangalore here. I mean, if you look at the other towns, I mean, there's probably better infrastructure, better stuff, but I'm not going to move anywhere else because Bangalore weather is nice. You can't change that, you can't introduce cool weather in Chennai. I mean, I think Tony, Dole, and all these guys come every time and they probably sweat their socks off. You can't avoid stuff like that. So some cities have different laws. People want to go there for a reason, and you can't take things like that away. So
I'd say that you can't, like, obviously you can't change the geographical location of a place, and you can't
Exactly.
change the weather, but you can change the terms of, like, incentives you have. If you have, say in Nigeria, you had two cities there, and they were equal. You had Lagos, but you had another alternative that was also being successful. Yes, people would flock there, and then you create more cities, and you spread the population between them. So your way of kind of spreading the population is creating other places for people to go that have incentive for them to go there because they're also successful, rather than having one place.
okay, look at the US system, okay? There are more than enough medium-sized cities, but people still move to New York. I mean, what's nearby? They have Baltimore, you have Detroit. What happened to Detroit? It was meant to be a medium-sized town running on one industry. The minute they could move somewhere else, they came to Chennai. And they were like, yeah, it's cheaper, let's run here. Maybe later this will happen in like Zimbabwe and they'll be really cool. But things, you can't decide things like that. Detroit just crashed because they didn't expect it to grow. They didn't expect it to stop like that. They didn't diversify. They didn't bring a need. The only law of that city was the motor industry.
Let's give them an opportunity.
Yeah, so coming to that, I think megacities are definitely more diverse in terms of their economy. They don't rely on just one industry, like as you mentioned, Detroit. So that basically makes them a lot more stable, and you have a variety of people doing a variety of jobs. You have the top-end engineers and the researchers. You also have the construction workers and everyone else. So everyone gets an opportunity to improve their life. It's basically the lure of the city is mainly for the fact that everyone comes there with certain aspirations, and that is a natural human instinct. So you can't stop that.
Final word to Withington, and then back out to the audience.
Okay, I'm going to come back on Ellen's point about megacities being more diverse with their economy. I'd actually like to answer that question with another question. Why does that require a megacity? Why can there not be construction workers? Why can there not be engineers in a medium-sized city? This innovation, we see in the UK, the place where there are the most Nobel Prize winners, the most inventions, it's not London, it's Cambridge, a small, medium-sized city with academics, people who are doing well. So why does it need to be a megacity for this diverse economy?
Well, you're going to have to hang and you're going to have to fit that in at some other point, okay? Right, audience, final round of questions from you. If you've already asked a question, put your hand down. So I'll take Aaron Stead there.
Hey, to the pro-megacity side, you keep making this economic argument that bigger means better, but you've missed something out, which is the whole concept of economies and diseconomies of scale. So, for example, London isn't a megacity. I live in Portsmouth. It takes me 2 hours on the train. If I want to get to my mate's house in a suburb of London, it can take me over 2 hours to get there. That's 90 miles compared to 10 miles. That's ridiculous. So the bigger it is, there's actually diseconomies of scale. There is actually a point at which it's beneficial, and then beyond that, economically it becomes inefficient. And you're just saying big is better, but economically, that isn't actually always true.
Thank you, Aaron. Chat down here. Okay.
My question goes to Sean and Sam. I just don't think you've quite addressed the freedom of choice issue yet. So regardless of the motives as to why these people want to move to megacities, it's still their choice. And I still feel that you haven't actually targeted that issue, that it's freedom of choice to move where they want to move.
Okay, I'll take my colleague Ed Noel, so he's upset.
Thanks very much. I'd like to draw attention to the fact that, the motion is about value judgment, whether megacities are good or bad for the developing world. No policy is implied by that motion, and I don't think Withington have any obligation to defend any policy. The fact they have defended quite an optimistic, I think, policy of multiple cities is actually quite a good thing. In the UK, we're often criticised for being very London-centric and focusing on one city being the capital, be-all and end-all of the UK. I think the fact that they've proposed multiple cities in the developing world is actually an optimistic, fantastic thing they've done, out with any obligation they had in this debate.
Okay, so debaters, when I come back in a moment, you're not going to have time to respond to all these questions. You're going to have time to pick one that you think is most important to deal with, so listen carefully. Right, so we go to the back. So chap at the end there. Yeah.
Hi. It's pretty clear that megacities have positive aspects and negative aspects. So my question is, given that, are they the best that we can do? And is that therefore a question about our capacity to manage large-scale, long-term change?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Right next to you, please. Microphone person.
To Shana and Sam, would you not say, from what you said yourself, the Nigerian government in trying to stop people living in its own megacity of Lagos is quite authoritarian.
Okay. Someone needs to run down to DM Judge Hilary Sook here in the green top. Hilary, if you can wave the wheel. Thank you.
Yes, this is for the opposition. So if your position is that megacities are good for the developing world, you'd almost say that means that they're bad for the developed world. But isn't it the case that with a megacity, it's actually much easier for Western countries to intervene in those areas, to go in and sell cigarettes and cars, and to actually increase Western intervention in the developing world?
Okay, I'll just take this person here at the end, sorry, well, Warren. And then that's it, I'm afraid. I'm sorry if I haven't taken you.
You've said a lot about your support for mid-sized cities, but forgive me if I'm wrong, I don't think you've actually defined what one is. And I was wondering if you could explain why the mid-sized cities are beneficial to the government and the economy rather than just to the individual.
Okay, audience, thank you very much. Right, so Sam, starting with you, you have an opportunity in a single sentence to reply to something that you think you want to take up from that second round of questions. So over to you.
The megacity, whilst people do still have freedom of choice in that they can move to the megacity if they want to, that doesn't mean it is good for the developing world. Yes, they can move there, but is it good? No, it's not.
Okay, good. Shana, same for you.
I'm going to take the Nigerian government question from back. I'd say that, yes, they tried to move people out to reduce the number of people, but there's in a way it is authoritarian, but there's a difference between having an authoritarian take on some of your policies and breaking your own constitution. Nigeria's government ended up being pushed to that because of the situation it's in, whereas what we're advocating is that not to happen, because hopefully we don't want megacities to get into the state that Lagos is in at the moment.
Okay, Withington, get ready for your final 1 minute summation. So, Ilan, what a quick one sentence reply to something that's just come up.
Okay, I think with the current resources that developing nations have, yes, megacities are probably our best option, because it's okay for people living in London to travel from all parts because you'll have excellent transport connectivity. But if you look at it realistically, compared to what?
I'm sorry. I live in a Whitefield, which is a suburb of Bangalore, and if you see the people who travel from like suburbs like Portsmouth, you're talking about Portsmouth. Now I'm talking about a town called Malur, where people walk down the train track. That's how they travel. You're complaining about getting a train. They're walking in front of the train.
The kind of resources we have, it's a little hard to invest in dispersed infrastructure. So I think it makes sense if you have a megacity, because at least everyone in that megacity and surrounding areas will have access to basic facilities, which is lacking in a large part of developing countries.
And they walk on the road, not on the railway.
And Nikhil, succinctly, if you've got something to say, because you're pleasantly verbose, but I haven't got time.
I think people are looking backward in this debate. I mean, you keep saying, let's move back to a medium city, let's control things. Why not look forward, take a step forward? This whole morning we had debates about innovation and visionary urbanism. Why don't we think about things like that? When people in the 1930s were dreaming of futuristic cities, now we're like, oh, that's boring, let's take a small city.
Okay.
Where's that dream gone?
Right, so on that point, well then, so you guys get ready for your final 1 minute summation. So, in the same order in which we originally spoke, Shana, you have 60 seconds to convince the judges that your side of the motion is right. You can incorporate any aspect of the discussion you think you would still like to respond to. I'll tap on the table. So, Shana.
Well, I'd say that the reason that megacities are bad for the developing world is because they simply do not have the resources necessary to implement the infrastructure needed to make megacities successful. The LSE published a report and it said that the transitional area that is a developing megacity can play a part in successful urban life, but only if it's possible to complete the transition, and that's something that developing nations really cannot do. This links back to a point that Nicola made earlier about Nigeria, saying that the government might see a return on its investment into Lagos. But the World Bank put $200 million into it, and they didn't even manage to complete the project. So finally, in my opening speech, I defined bad for the developing world as bad for the majority of the populace, and that's not going to be overcome by megacities in which only a minority benefit both culturally and economically. Megacities promote inequality and poverty for the majority, and they affect the outside of the country just as badly, and therefore they are bad for the developing world.
Can we hold rounds of applause to the very end? Sorry, because I'm trying to save time here. Shana, well done. So, Ilan, your final thoughts.
the transition, as Shiana mentioned, is always going to be there as long as people have the desire to move ahead, to be one step ahead of where they are currently. It is this desire of humanity to constantly want to achieve more that promotes progress at every point in time. And as long as this happens, there will constantly be a churning and upheaval, and I think we should embrace it as a positive and not look upon it as a negative. Whether we like it or not, it is no longer possible to keep the bulk of humanity down on the farm. The goal of humanity as of now is to manage the fate that urbanization is inevitable and it's going to happen, and we shouldn't succumb to it, rather we should embrace it.
Sam, your final thoughts, please.
All the benefits that the other side have discussed, I believe, are not specific to the megacity at all. There is no reason why these economic benefits, these cultural benefits, can't occur in a smaller city. But to continue that, to take on the freedom of choice argument that was brought in a couple of times, there is still freedom for people to choose to live in the megacity. However, there's also freedom for them to go to live in a smaller city where they're statistically less likely to experience the kind of poverty that is apparent in the megacity. But to summarise our argument, megacities are bad for the developing world, but even the use of the phrase developing world removes us from the humanity of the situation. The world is made up of people, and megacities cause great harm to the vast majority of them. The vast majority of these people will not receive adequate healthcare. The vast majority of these people will work menial jobs on an unlivable wage. The vast majority of these people become further entrenched in poverty. Megacities are socially damaging, geographically dangerous, and this is a volatile mixture which is, on balance, unequivocally bad for the developing world.
And finally, Nikhil.
Okay, I had written something, but then our last statement caught my attention. She said the vast majority doesn't receive healthcare. In rural areas, the vast majority doesn't know what healthcare is. Now, the other thing is, she mentioned about how, like megacities, you have the choice to move to a smaller city. But that's how smaller cities become bigger cities in the first place. Now, okay, now I'll read what I've written. So now she mentioned that you can't sustain Lagos earlier. She said it's a pouring, like, it's a lot of burden. You have to pour money into it. Now, how they sustain 2, 3, 4? Only 25% of the population has moved into Lagos. What happens when 100% moves in? What do they want to? It's however they get the money to create the next city by creating a Lagos. Lagos is an investment, and that's where they get the money from. They start begin with that, and then they build the next city. The population has always been there. You can't avoid that. So they're going to move somewhere. You need to give them the space and allow them to expand naturally.
Nikhil, thank you. Big round of applause. Deserved round of applause for both teams. Now, it's not quite over for you guys, because I'm going to turn now to the judges for their initial succinct feedback for both teams based on the debate they've just seen. And students, you'll know from your previous debates with Debating Matters that this is about constructive criticism. So where you've done well, the judges will say so, and where they think you've got space to improve, they'll tell you that as well. And it's about making you better debaters and thinkers in the future. So, Austin, if we could kick off with you, please. Feedback for Shiana and Samantha from Withington.
Okay, I'll try to be succinct. I think it's a good mix. I think you worked very well. You did the economic, and then you did the social. I thought there was a very good split. I mean, there's other splits you could have done, but I think that was a very nice starting point. Good use of data, good use of examples, good use of geographical knowledge from India to Nigeria to Sāo Paulo. I thought that was very useful. In terms of you as individuals, Shiana, when we start with Samantha, I thought first thing is your example of the green belt. The green belt doesn't stop people coming to the city, right? The green belt just stops the city growing, but you can walk across it and go to the city if you want to. And there's a couple of examples where you talk about city-specific problems of bad healthcare, inequality, crime. These are city problems. These are city problems. Not mega city problems particularly. So I just think that like traffic accidents happen when there's traffic. If you're in a rural area where there's no cars, everybody's healthy, they can walk the streets happily. Okay, but once you come to a city, then you get knocked down. But I think that there's a little bit of more specific reference to megacities would have been used. Shiana, I think you did mention about rural areas becoming denuded of people with the growth of megacities. You did change that in the responsive second part of this talk, which I thought was very useful. I also thought it was good that you dealt with this problem, which I think is key, which is necessary to restrict inflow of people to megacities. And this, I think, is the most fundamentally difficult problem. And the one thing which you have to realize, even the audience has to realize, is that when you talk about Lagos, bourgeois civil liberties do not apply. Okay? We're not talking about London or Manhattan. We're talking about third world economy. Now, it's a terrible thing to say, but that's what happens. And actually, restricting it for the greater good, which is what you touched on, but you didn't develop it enough, was very bold, I thought, and very interesting.
Austin, thank you very much. Yogesh.
Yeah, I thank you both for a very illuminating debate. I thought the flow of your arguments was very strong. I thought with you, Sam, the kind of dramatic picture you painted and almost a kind of a vision, a doomsday vision of megacities was quite powerful. But what I was wanting, and you attempted to do but didn't kind of progress enough, was about building a really powerful alternative picture of what, you made reference to medium-sized cities, but you didn't quite kind of build on what that might look and feel like. Shanna, I thought the issue around kind of stopping people coming into cities was, again, very intuitive and very interesting. But again, how does one do that? What are the levers that one needs? Is it a political structure that you have to have in place, or is it some other mechanism you didn't quite kind of build on, and to enrich the debate a bit more would be good?
Yogesh, thank you. And finally, Rebecca.
Yep, I like very much the beginning with the definition and your adherence to the utilitarian argument. That was yours. You set that out as a great frame, and it helped you to answer some questions later. I like the split, as Austin said, between the social and economic, but I felt, to be honest, that both of those two sections lacked sort of grounding and data. So I like the split, but I would have liked it to be a little bit heavier, in the sense that I'd have got a bit more fact out of it to launch you. I really like the way you had a great stock of ideas as you got questions. So you were able to flex your answers once you started listening and answering. You began to flex, but then you began to introduce some new ideas that you've got up your sleeve. I like the idea of the incentives. I would have loved to have heard a bit more about that. I really liked the reference to Germany. I would have liked a couple more reference examples of that type. But I really liked the way the thing built. So I felt there was a momentum to it all, and you picked the energy up from questions. So there was great sense of dynamism. Individually, I thought you, Sam, had great sort of presence and passion, and I think you, Shanna, bring data very well used, very nicely phrased and used in exactly the right point where it can move us forward in our thinking. So that was great. I think it was really great how it built. Actually, that was what I really felt about it.
Rebecca, thank you very much. Well done, Shanna and Samantha. You can join me. For Ilham and Nicole, Austin, we'll start with you again.
Well, I thought it was like a 1960s piece of art. I thought it was like symbolic of a megacity. You have stability and you have chaos. It was a very nice metaphor. A lot of the discussion was built on a little bit of an assertion that this thing will happen, that it's positive. But even by using that as your framework, I still think you delivered it kind of very well. I think you kind of both work strangely, interestingly well as a coherent whole, even though maybe other people may not have recognized that. So Ilham, I think what I've written down here is very ordered, very professional, very structured, very calm, right? And I thought it was very nicely delivered. I think there's a lot of research which has gone into that. From my position, I can see all these notes. It was knowledge kind of held very well and delivered in a way which was very accessible, and I enjoyed the way you delivered it. Nikhil, very funny. Very funny. It kind of came across as if you weren't prepared, but obviously you were, and this kind of conversational style was very charming. I think you won over a lot of people in the way you delivered it, but there was a lot of waffle hidden amongst all of that, and there was a kind of a slightly playing to the crowd more than maybe playing to the argument. I think that you're very responsive. That's one thing which I would say which is a remarkable feat from tricky questions, being able to respond like that, but you should also control that a little bit, and maybe kind of stay on track and focus on. So I think this idea about megacities will happen and all we need is infrastructural development is a simple argument. I think you could have developed it a little bit better, but I think that all things considered, it was a good performance, which I think is important in this.
Thank you, Austin. Yogesh.
I think Austin's covered most of the points I was going to make. But yes, I thought the flow of the conversation was very good. I think you worked well as a team. I think the bit I would have liked a bit more on would have been a focus on the value and the role of planning, and how planning can make megacities a more pleasant place, and how, say, fighting corruption and fighting the kind of underbelly of what makes megacities undesirable, and just bringing that out to the fore would have enriched it. Ilan, I thought some of your cross-examining and your ability to respond to the questions asked from the audience was fantastic. Nikhil, your humour kind of was amazing. It was, it kept the flow of the conversation. I certainly kind of will remember quite a lot of your comments and statements, and the traffic light one will stay with me for a good while. So thank you very much for that. So yeah.
Thank you, Yogesh. And finally, Rebecca.
Yeah. Yes, very different team and very different and very interesting team dynamics. I would have liked a little bit more definition earlier, so at the beginning from you. I was really impressed by the way you brought in all your knowledge really that you brought in from the megacities in India. So you had that advantage, I suspect, call it an advantage if we may, but you used it so well, and you used it so sort of calmly, and you answered questions, you listened, but you used that stuff very well, and you also began to use data quite late, I thought, and it's a shame we didn't get it a bit earlier. I was particularly impressed by the way you turned around, or the way you answered me. I thought that on the question about sort of citizenship was a very comprehensive answer, but I also was really impressed about the way you turned around the question of social unrest. It really impressed me, and I will not forget that one. I thought it was excellent the way you turned that on its head. Made us think, I think made us leave thinking on that one. I think, Ilan, you have to really, you've got the whole thing at your fingertips, and you make us feel as if you're in control, so that's a great sense, because we feel we are being led by someone who knows where they're going. Nikhil, I think a little bit too much of the humour, and if I might say so, but of course we all enjoyed it, and we enjoyed the journey with you, and some of the images you left us with. And yeah, I think you covered a lot of the questions, but perhaps didn't quite get the definition thing.
Rebecca, thank you very much. Can we thank our panelists? Council banner and whisper quietly.
Ever my life, I hope you won.
You want to take them out? Well, if the judges leave, that does allow us to do the just for fun audience vote, which has no consequence whatsoever, but is an indication of what you, the audience, think about the debate and who you think won this motion. Right, so for those of you that aren't rushing off, can I see a show of hands for those who were most convinced by Withington Girls School on that debate? Who thought Withington Girls won that motion? And can I see a show of hands for those who thought MPS Koramangala won that? I think these guys just picked it, but it doesn't mean a thing. It's all relevant. Everyone needs to stay put, don't go anywhere, and in just a few moments we'll find out which of these two teams are international champions. Apparently you were given access to British Council feedback forms. If you could please fill them in now and leave them on your seat as you go, that would be great. Okay, everyone, seats please. Right, as the judges take their seats, I have a couple of announcements. The first is, at the very end of this debate, we need to clear this room relatively quickly, and you're all going to want to leave quickly because there's a drinks reception in the Guildhall, level G, which is next to the food hall, so we hope to see you all there for a drink. Also, if you have any items left in the cloakroom, now is the time to collect them, not this minute, as soon as we're finished. Finally, Debating Matters has a gift for everybody, which are these really beautiful bright pink bookmarks. They have the most amazing quote on which absolutely sums up the ethos of the competition. From Professor Raymond Tallis, a renowned philosopher and Debating Matters judge. He says there are worse things than losing an argument. There is winning an argument through oversimplification of the issues or dishonest mobilisation of bad arguments and wrong facts, and that's a perfect summation of what debating that is about. So if you all would like one of these, my colleague Joel at the back has a thick bundle with them, so please grab one on the way out. So, judges, who's going to give the feedback? So, Yogesh, your job is to now explain how you've come to your decision and finally which of these teams won.
Right. Well, we were warned to be quick, and if we weren't, then I'm sure we still would have been outside now deliberating, because it was a very tough decision for us. We felt that the debate drew out a lot of kind of very salient points and built up the tension and was engaging certainly throughout. It was the hour and 15 minutes or so we've been debating. I was gripped, and my fellow judges were as well with the debate, and so it was an extremely hard decision for us to make. We have made a decision, and I'm pleased to say that the winners are Shiana and Sam.
Koramangala. I hope you've enjoyed the whole experience. You've come a long way and you put up a really great show. And congratulations to you guys. Tony and I have given up hope of any UK team ever. We're not really biased, but we just so congratulations, finally, second UK team. India is still up in this whole thing. Congratulations to Withington Girls. Big round of applause for these guys.